Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
Hey everybody, it's that time of the week. It's Monday. And here we are on You as a Whole, Body, Mind, and Soul, How to Cope with Mortality, Time and Mortality, here on USA Global TV and Radio. So first thing I want to talk about is this is probably one of the hardest topics for anybody to talk about. The number one word in the English language, in any language, that I can think of is death. I hate the word death. I don't like it at all. Have always been freaked out by it, and it's always one of those things that has really caused angst in my life, both my own death, which I hate to break the news to everybody, but we're all going to die. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't think I'm spilling the beans here, but I looked at this last week and I think about all the people who died, the famous people who died, and Malcolm Jamal Warner and Ozzy Osbourne and Hulk Hogan, and there were a couple other musicians who passed away. I didn't know who they were. I can't remember their names, but they were musicians that passed away. And it's like, man, oh man, what's going on here? How are we losing all these people? And, in the case of Malcolm Jamal Warner, you're talking about a 54-year-old, and that's young to die. I mean, I'm 50, and to think that I would have 4 years left is not comforting at all. My troubles with death go back a long way to childhood. I really was spooked by it. It manifests itself in a kind of a weird way. I was afraid of dead people when I was a young kid, and I don't know if it was just that I couldn't process that somebody could be here 1 minute and then all of a sudden they're not. I don't know if that's what it was, or I really can't put my finger on it. And I've tried. I've talked about this in counseling and try to figure out, why was I afraid of the people who died? What was I afraid of? What was going to happen? And in my mind, I would see them. And if I was in a dark room, they would jump out at me. And that was my 8, 10, 12, 15-year-old brain struggling with that. And then as I got older, obviously that started to go away, and I didn't really, and I don't have that fear now. I'm not afraid of dead people. I mean, they're dead. They're not going to come back, and they're not going to hurt me or do anything or scare me. In fact, it would be nice if I could get visited. Some people say they get visited by people who have passed away, and if that were to happen, that would be great. I would love that. I wouldn't be scared at all. I'd actually be pretty happy about that. And I think it's happened to me in dreams. I did have a dream about a friend of mine. And this is a weird one. I had breakup in college, at the end of college in 1997. And this lady that I worked with in the bank, she was probably about 60, 62, somewhere around there, 61, somewhere in that neighborhood. And when I had the breakup, it was my first real sustained relationship. So it was kind of hard. And I was graduating from college that year. So it was really tough because there was a lot going on at the same time. And I was really, really down. And her name was Betty. And Betty could see that I was upset throughout the whole day when I was working as a bank teller. And I said, Betty, this is, I actually didn't say anything to Betty, really. And as I'm walking out, she pulled me aside and she said, Justin, come here. And she was like a grandmother figure to me. I was 22 and she was 60. So it was almost like a grandson, grandmother type relationship. And she would always, when I would come to the bank, is that my Justin? And she'd come, and we're both Italian, and she liked the fact that I was an Italian kid, and she'd give me a hug and a kiss, and we'd always talk and talk about Italian stuff and all kinds of stuff, family and things like that. But anyway, she could tell I was upset throughout the day, so she pulled me aside and she said, Justin, I know that you're sad, and I know that you're blue, but she just wasn't the girl for you, which kind of rhymes, really. It was kind of strange how she came up with that, and it rhymes. I said, yeah, Betty, I guess that's what it is. And, it's still tough to take. It's not easy to process, but, she said, now stop it, just let it go. Hey, Claire, I see Claire is watching. So it's always good to have Claire on the line. And so anyway, I left the bank, and yeah, I remember that I had tickets to the Washington Capitals game, Flyers on Washington Capitals in Landover, and I wasn't going to go. I was like, I'm too upset. I can't go. I'm not going. And my friends had tickets for me, a ticket for me, and my dad said to me, you got to go. You can't waste the ticket and not go to. That's a neat experience to go to an away Flyers game in Landover. That's where they played back then, the Capitals. And I was like, I'm not going. He's like, just go. And then I said, okay, fine. And then I told him what Betty said. So my dad said, that's a good friend. That's a friend that told you something that you didn't want to hear, but told you the truth. And she told you what was real. And that's how you have a good friend. And I said, yeah. I said, that's true. I didn't think about that. And I said to him, I'll never forget this. I said, the next time I see Betty, I'm going to give her a real big hug and thank her for, doing what she did and being the friend that she was. About a week later, I was at a co-op and I was miserable. I mean, it was 1997 was a horrible year for me in many, many ways. The breakup, graduating college, just a bunch of things. So it was like one thing was heaped on another. And so Betty, well, anyway, I was at the co-op and I was miserable as it was. And the bank called and left a message at my house. And my parents called me at this co-op and they said, the bank wants to talk to you. Now, I thought the bank wanted to say, can you work some extra hours? So I didn't think anything of it. And I called the bank and a lady answered the phone, one of the other tellers. And she said, Justin, I have to tell you something. And I said, okay, what is it? And she said, Justin, Betty was in a car accident. And I said, oh my God, is she all right? And she goes, Justin, Betty died. And I felt my knees buckle. I could actually feel my knees go out from under me. And it was, I thought, my God, this is like a week or 2 weeks after I just had this conversation with her. I just told my dad that I was going to give her a big hug the next time I saw her. And there was no next time. I never saw her again. I went to her funeral, but I never saw her again alive. And I remember sitting there and just my legs wouldn't work. And then I tried to go to the bathroom and I remember trying to urinate and I was locked. I mean, I couldn't even function. My bodily functions weren't working. I mean, it took me a half an hour just to try to go urinate. I mean, and I'm, I know that's a lot of information, but that goes to show you how the body reacts to certain things. I mean, it's just unbelievable how a shock like that or something painful like that can just completely override your nervous system, and it did. It really did. And it was tough. I mean, I it was a tough week, and I remember the Saturday that we went to her funeral, which was a week after the accident, because she had gotten an accident on Saturday, and it was another Saturday the next week. I'm like, last week at this time, she was getting ready to go to a party and got in the car thinking she was headed to a party. And now this week, it's 7 days later, and she's gone. And we're saying goodbye to her. How is that possible? Like, it doesn't seem real. So I went to the funeral, and it was hard. And when I got home, I remember that Betty had left the voice message on the bank's answering machine. And after the funeral, when I went home, I dialed that number probably 50 times. I have no idea how many times, but I just listened to her voice. It was like just one, like, I know that they're going to change this voicemail, right? So I wanted to hear her voice as much as I possibly could. And I would dial and listen and hang up and dial and listen and hang up. I just kept doing it over and over and over again. It was obsessive. It was actually absolutely obsessive. And then finally, I knew that's it. That's all you can do. And couple months later, not too much later, that was April of 97. In June of 97, it was the anniversary of my girlfriend and I getting together in college. And I was in my room, miserable, I'm working a job I hated. I'm out of college. I'm no longer a big fish in a small pond. A tiny little minnow in a huge pond. I had no self-confidence left. I wasn't going to the gym, so my body, my muscle tone was just not anywhere near what it was when I was in college. So I lost that. Pardon me. I was not doing well playing hockey anymore. My skills had diminished because of just not being able to keep up with it. So I mean, there was nothing good going on, and I laid on that bed, and it was the night that Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield had the fight when Mike Tyson bit his ear, because I can remember I was watching that when I was doing this, and I was just journaling and stuff like that, and I finally fell asleep. And when I had the dream, when I was dreaming, I saw Betty in the dream, and I said, Betty, what are you doing here? You're dead. How are you here? And she said, what did I tell you in the bank? And I said, I know what you told me. You said, don't be sad and don't be blue. She wasn't the girl for you. And she said, that's right. That's what I told you in the bank. And somehow then we were transported into the bank in this dream. And I said, well, Betty, I never got a chance to say thank you and to give you a hug and, just let you know that your friendship meant a lot to me. And she said, well, you just did. And I like to think that was not just a dream, that was an actual encounter with someone who, yeah, passed away. But does that mean that they're gone? Does that mean that they're gone forever? Do we ever really go away? Yeah, the body passes away, but the soul, does it last? And I know people are going to argue. You could fight to the death on this. You'll get people who will say it's all pipe dream, heaven, or universe or whatever. And I've heard people make fun of me and other people about the God being the magic man in the sky and all that stuff. And that's fine if they want to belittle it. I mean, I think it's immature, but if they want to do that, that's up to them. But I really believe that was Betty coming to say, hey, come on, man, let's get it going, and giving me a chance to thank her when I didn't have the chance to thank her on Earth. And I believe on the 20th anniversary of her death, I actually reached out to her son, who is much older than I am. He's about her age now. He's probably older than what she was. He's about 65. And I just said, I want to thank you for your mother and all the things that she did, and thanks for sharing her with us. And it was really cool to get to. We just texted each other, but it was nice. And so, yeah, I hate death. There's nothing good about it. There's no upside to it. There's an upside to afterlife. I believe that, and I believe that death is not the end. But if you ask me, do I ever doubt, or am I ever afraid? Yeah, of course. I can't give you a definitive answer on whether there's a heaven or there's not, or whether there's an afterlife or there's not. I can't do it. I've never been there. Um, I believe it, but can I scientifically tell you that it's definitely there? I can't. I have no way of proving it. That doesn't mean that I don't believe it. Everybody's got doubts. But over these last few months, as many of you know who have watched the show, it's been a really downhill slide. Actually, for the last 3 years, really, it's been a downhill slide for me. And it's, I lost my marriage, don't live in my house anymore. You know, depression has really set in and been tough. I'm going to intensive therapy for the last 3 weeks, and this is my last week. I'm going to graduate. And you can see I'm feeling better. I mean, I think it shows on my face that I'm feeling better. I'm not 100%, but the therapy works and it helps, and I'm moving forward. And it's not linear though. There are ups and downs. And over the weekend, I was upset, and I was thinking, man, it was my my oldest daughter, Alexandra, her last swim meet of her career. I'm thinking, man, where did the time go? She's 18, and it was the last time I was going to watch her swim. And I watched her jump off the blocks and swim, and I'm thinking, this is the last competitive swim she'll ever have in her entire life. This is the last one that's going to matter. And it took me back to when I played hockey as an 18-year-old. I didn't think about it at the time, but the last game that I played, it was a championship game. And it didn't dawn on me at the time that was the last time I would ever play a meaningful game. Yeah, I would play other games, and as I get older, we played some rec hockey leagues and things like that. But I didn't put that together until I was like, whoa, this is the last time it's going to actually matter. Like, this is the last time it's going to really mean anything. And I thought about that with her. Like, this is the last time she's going to swim, and it's not just going to be for fun. It's going to be, it's for for the marbles, all the marbles, and they won the championship, which is nice because she went out as a champion, and I'm happy that that happened. But in the span of time that it took her to swim from one side to the other, I remember just all that going through my mind like a movie reel of me skating and her swimming, and a kind of a mix of both. And her at 5 years old, and her at 14 years old, and now her at 18 years old, and her going and finishing up. And when she was done, I thought, man, that's over. Where did the time go? And how do you process that? It doesn't seem like it's that long ago. It doesn't seem like it's 18 years, or, well, in her case, she's 18 years old. So what, like 13 years of swimming. I remember when she was born, putting my head on her chest and listening to her breathe. And that was incredible. It seems like yesterday. And then all of a sudden, it's 18 years later, and she's an adult and she's going to college. It's hard to reconcile. And, they also they celebrated the seniors on Saturday at the meet, and they mentioned one senior who was killed in a car accident who didn't make it. He was around last year, but he died. And I thought, man, that's again, it's so hard to reconcile that. Like, this 18-year-old kid is gone, and he should have been on those blocks, jumping in the water and celebrating and having a good time. And instead, he's not. And I can't imagine what it would have felt like if I was in that position, if I were the parent and had to know that, your what should have happened didn't happen. So I really have been reflecting on time. And another thing a friend of mine said to me that really hit home. She said, she was Morella, who was a really close friend in college. When I saw her after 28 years or whatever, we hadn't seen each other for almost 30 years, and we were really close friends in college. And she said something to me. She said, remember, I know you're going through depression and going through some tough times, but don't forget, 100 years from now, none of this is going to matter. None of it. And she's right. She's right. That in 100 years, we're all going to be gone. None of us are going to be here unless, you're a baby right now, and you're going to be, obviously a baby's not listening to this show, but anybody who's old enough to listen to the show is not going to be around in 100 years. I'm certainly not. I'm not going to live to be 150. And, it's morbid, and it's dejecting if you think about it, but we're born to die. I mean, the second we're born is when we start the clock, and you don't know how long the clock is going to run. You don't know if it's going to run a long time or a short time, and you don't know what, even if it's a long time, what there is through that lifetime. What are the things? And what I'm trying to get at is, I think I'm trying to learn. I'm not great at this, but I'm trying to learn that we got to enjoy the moments, because no matter how much you try to hold on to them, and no matter how much you pine for the past, and no matter how much you beg and wish that you could relive something, you just can't. It's not going to happen. And the future, we don't know what the future is at all. We just don't know. We don't know. I mean, Malcolm Jamal Warner a week ago, I had no idea that he was about to spend his last couple days. No idea. 54 years old, seemingly fine, great shape, healthy, and he dies. Did he have another? If he didn't go on that beach that day, did he have another 30 years, 40 years? Maybe. He might have, but we'll never know. And then you got the idea of the tragedy of young death, but there's also a romance to it, because that person is frozen at that time. Now, at the time of the death, it's traumatic and it's sad and it's something that hurts, and you look at it and say, well, what a catastrophe that this person died. Like, example would be when I was a kid. I'm still am, but I was a big Flyers fan, and there was a player on the Flyers. His name was Pelle Lindbergh, and there were documentaries actually coming out about him over the next few months. And I even interviewed a lot of people about Pelle. And Pelle was 26, on top of the world. Flyers had just gone to the Stanley Cup Finals. They're about to, they're getting close. They went to the finals. He won the Vezina Trophy as the top goaltender in the league in June 12th. I can actually remember the date that he won the trophy. And he's at the pinnacle of his career, right? I mean, everything's going right. And on November 10th, 1985, he got in a car after drinking. Unfortunately, made a crucial mistake and hit the gas and drove right into a wall and died. Now, he didn't die right away. He was brain dead within a few hours. And then, once you're brain dead, obviously that's it. But um, I remember listening to, in Philadelphia, there's a station called KYW. It was KYW News Radio. And I was listening to the news over and over and over again. And I'm sitting there listening to the news, and the newspaper was there as well. And I'm actually looking at an article talking about, Pelly's future. And I was looking at his statistics in the newspaper. And at the same time, I'm hearing on the news that he's virtually dead. And it's like, well, how is it that this was written less than 24 hours ago? This was written 12 hours ago, if that. And now everything's changed. How is that? I mean, we're literally talking about a blip of time. I mean, we're talking about like 8 hours that all these statistics in this article is written up about him. And what's he going to, what are they going to do with the other goaltender? And Pelly's going to sign a contract on Monday, and it's Sunday in the paper. And I'm listening to, really, literally his death on the radio. And I'm just like, I can't. I was 10. So it was like, how do you process this? How do you cope with this? Or if it's somebody in your family, I mean, how do you, just recently we lost my uncle in November, and it wasn't shocking. I mean, he was not doing well, but he wasn't expected to die right then and there. And it was like, he'd just been talking to me about life and about giving me advice about what I should do. He had been divorced as well, and he was telling me what it was like and how to get through it and giving me tips and things like that. And I was really appreciative, and we were pretty close, especially at the end of his life. We didn't really see each other that much when I was younger, but when we got a little older, when I was in my teens, especially, we got pretty close. And especially as I became an adult, we really bonded, especially over sports. That was such a big thing with him. And I had just gotten separated, and I walked out of the bedroom, and my mom, I moved back home, and my mother came out and said, I got some bad news for you. Uncle Robert passed away. And I was like, it's like, wow, how does this, yesterday he was alive. Today he's dead. And intellectually, that this stuff is going to happen. It's inevitable that we're all going to die. And you could bank on it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But you still, at least me, have trouble reconciling it. It's a known fact, but yet still hard to believe when it happens. It's just so striking, and it takes your breath away. But one of the things I was going to say about Pelly Lindbergh, I got off the track a little bit, was, it was tragic that he died at 26, but now it's 40 years later. And he's frozen at 26. No one will ever think of him as an older guy who lost his ability, as an older guy who his career ended, and now he's doing something else. I would think that most people want a long life, but there is some magic or romance to the fact that when people do die young, that they are frozen in time. They never get old. They're perpetually young. John Kennedy. I mean, think about John Kennedy. I have trouble picturing John Kennedy as an 80-year-old or a 90-year-old. He died at, I think he was 43 when he was assassinated. I mean, he will perpetually be 43. John Lennon was another one. I remember in 1980, December 8th, 1980, John Lennon got assassinated in New York City. And people were devastated. Of course they were. He was 40 years old. He was a young guy. He was, again, at the top of his profession. He was a great musician, obviously a former Beatle, probably the most popular of the former Beatles. And he's killed. And in 1980, and 81 and 82, it was tragic. Now we're many, many, many years later. So we're over 40 years later, 45 years later, And while it's still tragic that he died young, there is part of it that you're like, well, but he's perpetually 40. He's never going to age. You're never going to see him, like Phil Collins that you see today, who can't even stand up anymore and can't sing, and he's trying to do his best to continue his career when it's over, and he's doesn't even look like he's going to live that much longer. He's really in bad health, and I heard today he was not doing well. But you know, you never will see that happen to John Lennon. It's not going to happen because he died young. So no, I don't think it's great that he died young. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but it's there is a silver lining in that you're not going to see the digression and see people degrade over time when they die young. You're going to see them, and they're going to, in your mind, you will picture them as they were. So I I really don't, and my family really is big on this. We don't think that heaven is above or somewhere far out there and far away. We think it's really right around us. That I heard somebody one time say there's just a veil, and we just can't see beyond the veil. But the veil is thin, and the people that we lost are still there. They're just there in a different way. They're close by. They're not far away. I think a lot of times people think of heaven as up, above space, as if that's where, if you eventually got a rocket ship, you'd be able to get to heaven. Well, that I don't think that's the case. I think what it is that it's everywhere. I don't go to cemeteries. I don't leave flowers at cemeteries. They're not there. They're everywhere. I don't think you need to go. I mean, look, if that makes people feel good, if that gives them a feeling of peace, then sure, do it. Go to the cemetery, leave flowers, talk to the gravestone if that's what you want to do. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I don't feel the need to do it personally because I can talk to them anytime I want. If I want to talk to them in the car, I talk to them in the car. If I want to talk to them when I'm in my bedroom laying down, getting ready to go to sleep, I talk to them then. I don't think I need to be anywhere. I think they're here. They're all around us. As far as my own mortality, you start to think about it. I would say at 50 is when I mean, I was always afraid to die, especially as a kid. I was always, one of my bugaboos was cancer. I was always afraid that cancer was lurking around the corner. And that's one of my biggest fears is cancer, because it's just so devastating. It's a disease that really tears you apart. And I was close to it actually with my colon when I had my total proctocolectomy. It was almost colon cancer. And that's one of my biggest fears. But I don't, I think it was more of an out there fear. And then now at 50, it's more like, yeah, I know that the hourglass is now past the halfway point. I get that. I'm probably not going to live another 50 years. That's asking a lot to get to 100. So, I was talking to one of the counselors today at therapy, and they were saying, you got another 30, 40 years left. And I was like, wow, I can remember 30 years ago like it was yesterday. So in a blink of an eye, that 30 years is going to go by, or even 40 years is going to go by quickly. And I'm going to look back and say, where did it go? How did it go away? How did that time disappear? It just does. It just goes away. And I don't know what the best way is to cope with it. I mean, maybe somebody does. Maybe somebody can chime in and give some perspective on how you cope with it. I also don't want to cope with the fact that before death usually comes degradation, where your body just doesn't work anymore. I take pride in the fact that I have a built body, and 20-inch biceps and able to bench press what I can bench press and able to do all the things I can do. But there's going to come a day where that's not going to happen anymore. And little by little, I'm going to lose it. And that muscle is going to shrink. And there's nothing I can do about it. I could spend as much time in the gym as I want, and it's not going to change the fact that Father Time's going to win in the end. Now, I'm going to fight him. I'm going to fight him hard, but he's going to win. And I know that, and we try to hold on, especially seeing these people like Hulk Hogan. I remember being a kid and being enamored by, the big, strong, tough guy that was against evil, and he took on everybody who was trying to destroy the world, and he was larger than life, almost literally, right? He was such a big guy, 6'7", 302 pounds, just a monster. 24-inch biceps. I mean, just an absolute monster. And it's 40 years later, and he's gone. And it's like, well, it seemed like yesterday that I was watching him on TV and all excited about seeing him in there. And I know Claire is a big wrestling fan, so she probably feels the same way I do. If she's still on, I know she might be working, but it's hard to not hope, because I didn't know him personally, so it's not a personal loss, but it's hard to reconcile that that's the same guy that I watched on TV and that I went to the arenas to watch and to see, and all of a sudden, he's gone. And he fought age probably inappropriately with steroids, and he dyed his hair and he dyed his beard, and that type of thing. He tried to stay 35 years old forever, and you're not going to win that game. I mean, you're just not. You could try, and I'm not saying don't, but inevitably age is going to catch up with you, and it did for him. And in fact, he probably died younger than he would have if he just let himself age naturally without steroids and stuff like that, because that does lead to heart conditions and problems. But I don't have an answer, and I think I've said that over the last 3 or 4 weeks that maybe we don't need answers to these questions. Maybe one quick thing. I know we're almost out of time, but I remember when I was a kid on Sesame Street, they had to teach death because Mr. Hooper, who owned the store, died. And Sesame Street, they were brilliant. These people were absolutely brilliant. They had the death episode of Mr. Hooper on Thanksgiving of 1983. Because they knew if they did it on Thanksgiving morning, that parents would be sitting with their kids watching it because they'd probably be home because it was a holiday. And Big Bird came out and drew pictures of all the neighbors and drew a picture of Mr. Hooper and said, "Where is he?" And they said, "Well, remember, we told you Mr. Hooper died." And Big Bird said, "Well, when's he coming back?" And they said, "Well, he's never coming back." And Big Bird couldn't believe it. He's like, "He's never coming back?" "No, never." And Big Bird said, "Well, what do we do?" And they told him, the adults said, "Just remember him." And he's like, "Yeah, we can remember him as much as we want." And, Big Bird said it would never be the same. And one of the adults got up and said, "You're right, Big Bird. It will never be the same. It's not going to be. But at least we had the chance to love him and to be with him while he was here." And I think maybe that's the answer. And Big Bird said to him, "Well, I still don't understand. Why did he have to die?" And one of the other adults got up and said, "Big Bird, just because." And Big Bird said, "Just because?" And he said, "Just because." So we're never going to have the answer to why we have the time limits that we have, why mortality happens. But it's just because. So what I'm hoping is that I learn to do, and hoping that other people learn to do, is take the time that we have, enjoy it, and make the most that you can out of it. Because if you don't, you're not slowing it down any. So either enjoy it and take it for what it is and live in the present. It's very hard, easier said than done, but enjoy it for what it is, because you got one shot at this, and that's it. All right, so I want to thank Claire for chiming in. I want to thank Dr. Jacqueline for producing tonight, and this hopefully made you think, not brought you down, but made you think about, I got to get the most out of my life. That's the moral of the story. Not the dwelling on death, not the dwelling on sadness, not the dwelling on loss, but the dwelling on, yeah, you have limited time, and that could be an advantage because that means you can get in as much as you can get in as fast as you can. All right, so we will see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Have you ever felt unheard? Like your words float into a void, leaving you invisible and disconnected? How about feeling judged, when assumptions overshadow your truth, leaving you misunderstood and defensive? And then there's that moment when someone offers solutions you never asked for, dismissing your feelings and leaving you more frustrated than before. It doesn't have to be this way. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the listening mentor, understands. She's here to help you reclaim your voice, build stronger connections, and create meaningful conversations that inspire understanding and mutual respect. Through her groundbreaking books, online and in-person courses, and interactive workshops, you'll learn how to navigate life's most challenging interactions. Discover the power of elevated listening and transform how you communicate. Master setting boundaries and asking permission to protect your peace. Learn to recognize and release judgment, fostering empathy and true connection. Dr. Kerbeck also offers personalized coaching, one-on-one or group sessions, designed to fit your unique needs. Whether in person or virtually on StreamYard, her guidance will empower you to thrive. You don't have to struggle alone. The path to deeper connections and better relationships start here. Visit drjacqueline.com or usaglobaltv.com. Join a global community of empowered listeners and transform your life, one meaningful conversation at a time. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is the listening mentor. Start your journey today.
Conveniently located in the Cherry Hill Mall in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Avio Art specializes in custom art and photography printing. From museum-quality canvas prints and stretching to photo restoration, fine art reproduction, and framing with museum-grade glass, every service is completed in-house with exceptional attention to detail. Visit avioart.com or email support@avioart.com.
What if one simple skill could change the way you connect with the world? What if listening could open doors to deeper relationships, stronger businesses, and a better you? Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the listening mentor, brings you USA Global TV and Radio, a space where voices are heard, ideas are shared, and global communities thrive. Through the elevated listeners' courses and books, you'll master the power of listening, set boundaries with confidence, and transform conversations into opportunities. Join us. Listen, learn, elevate. Whether you're a leader, a coach, a business owner, or someone seeking stronger connections, your journey starts today. Subscribe, learn, and transform today.
From the magical world of the amazing adventures of Lady Ella comes a heartwarming new journey filled with kindness, courage, and compassion. Lady Ella, the beloved ladybug and listening mentor, is back, and this time she is not alone. Meet her brave and thoughtful brother, Lord Jack. Together, they take flight on their very first kindness adventure. Along the way, they meet 3 new friends in need: a duck feeling discouraged, a mouse struggling to be understood, and a busy little bee who's completely lost. But with the power of elevated listening and simple acts of kindness, Lady Ella and Lord Jack show us how understanding and empathy can make the biggest difference in someone's day. Written by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the listening mentor, this 9th book in the best-selling Lady Ella series teaches children ages 5 to 10 the essential skills of listening, kindness, and etiquette. Now available for pre-order on Amazon. Scan the QR code and order your copy today.
Five Little Known Secrets for Dementia Caregivers with Tracy Cram-Perkins.
Hi there, I am Tracy Cram-Perkins, the host of the Dementia Home Care Show here on USA Global TV and Radio. I am also the author of the book of the same name. And you'll see this QR code. This is for an extended version of this same talk. So if you want to see the full hour-long version, feel free to scan the code and go to that website. Stick with me. We'll talk about 5 little known secrets to make it a little easier to do dementia caregiving. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is a healthy aged brain, age 55 and above. The one you're seeing on the right is an Alzheimer's disease brain. It is in moderate disease. It is shrinking. It has holes in it. The memories that were in those holes no longer exist. When you're learning something, let's say in kindergarten, you learn how to tie your shoelace. Well, then by the time you're in 2nd grade, your brain remembers that information from tying the shoelace and applies it so you can learn more quickly how to tie more complex knots. So the brain is hardwired to do this for us, so it helps us learn faster so it doesn't take as long to acquire knowledge. The brain is looking for the information and they pick the closest to wherever that hole is. Let's look at some tips that we can use to help do that. These are 5 simple tools you can use as a dementia caregiver to help your loved one. The whiteboard is a useful tool in recording the day's activities and the answers to repetitive questions. The calendar clock is a very useful tool to orient your loved one on the day, the date, and the time, and remind them of upcoming appointments. The communication cards are a great tool to bridge the gap when they can no longer tell you what's wrong. And then there's the pill minder for when your loved one is still able to take pills but needs prompting. The final tool I want to share with you is the memory book. It tells your loved one's story. It's a great tool for distraction, redirection, also as a conversation starter, and telling you where they are in their story so you know how to answer their questions. Music is probably the most powerful tool in your toolbox after laughter. Music is a way to maintain connection. It sticks with your brain longer than any other thing, including reading. When you're having an issue with somebody, you can play their favorite music if you move them to another room, something that makes them happy, or you can start singing songs together from their childhood. These are some of my favorite books for caregivers. My show airs on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, and you can view past episodes on YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
This program has been brought to you in part by Tracy Cram-Perkins. Connect with her and order her book at tracycramperkins.com. For more information about Alzheimer's disease, support resources, and how you can help, contact the Alzheimer's Association at 1-800-272-3900 or visit their website at www.alz.org. They offer 24/7 helpline support and a wealth of information to assist you and your loved ones.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.